Welcome to Framework. I'm John, one of the hosts of Framework. With me, as always, is Al, the other host of Framework. How are you today, Al?
I'm very good, man. We're here to talk about Mass Effect and try and figure out maybe why it has not been put on the screen yet. Obviously, it's been put on screens in video game form, but we both kind of think that this has all the makings of a big popular TV series.
Yeah, this is... I feel like you would be making a lot of money if you just said, wow, let's turn Mass Effect into a television show. A Game of Thrones style television show, I believe. I think that is that is probably what I would put up as the template. You know, obviously it's a very different property. You're not cutting between that many characters or you have a narrative thrust that is different than Game of Thrones. But that is the general vibe, the general style, and obviously the expensive qualities of Game of Thrones, I think you would have to do those here too. But this feels like the next big idea. It's not just a repeat of Game of Thrones. It's not Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, or something like that. Where it's
it has enough similarities to give people something to latch on to.
Yes.
And I think part of the problem is I think the easy answer for why it hasn't been done is that you're right. It could be very successful at the right hands, but there's no way to do it cheaply. And for as much as it could be the next Game of Thrones, it could also be the next Wheel of Time, or The Expanse.
Wheel of Time was not done with money, nor The Expanse really that would be required for this.
I think the Wheel of Time was crazy expensive.
No, it's way less than the Rings of Power, and it's a big problem for Wheel of Time that they don't have enough money. Really, it's still probably losing them money in some way. I'm sure most streaming shows do that, but Game of Thrones did not. And I think there were people playing in the Game of Thrones arena. They were trying to have the next Game of Thrones, and they went about it in the very obvious ways of doing, well, let's do a very lengthy R-rated fantasy show, that costs an amazing amount of money. And I think that was just too similar because everyone was doing that at the same time. I think it needed to be its own new genre thing, And obviously we've had space operas before, but not a really popular one on TV like this. Closest you could say is Battlestar Galactica. But even that is not, that's not on the level of Game of Thrones in popularity or in mass appeal. And, Star Trek, obviously, but that's its own episodic thing.
Yeah, Star Trek is its own beast. We've had, and I guess now we're getting Star Wars on streaming for whatever that's worth, which,
sure,
we've decided it's worth quite a bit less than it was on the big screen, by all accounts. But you're right, the most successful versions of this have been hampered, like Battlestar Galactica or The Expanse. Those are creatively successful in a lot of ways, but they're Sci-Fi Channel stuff. They don't have the budgets that Rings of Power got or that HBO will throw at a proper prestige production. And that this kind of needs that. I think you're trying to do this cheaply. It's going to fall flat. It's not going to work for people. I think the other part of that is, part of the reason why it seems like such a no-brainer to push this forward is that there is a known IP with a complete story to work with here, and everything has to be based on a known intellectual property these days. But that IP is a video game, and up till now, the video games have not been respected as source material. Maybe The Last of Us has moved that ball somewhat.
Yeah.
But that's the first time that a video game product had anything approaching prestige.
Well, that is what I think that I would say that's what we're aiming for here. Something like that. It's kind of got a bigger scale and a bigger, effects budget than Last of Us would have, which is, not insignificant, but that is the way that show works. I think you take that and take a little Game of Thrones, another proven thing, and you have essentially this. You have something that is going to have mass appeal, that is going to have, a devoted fan base built in, but also will attract new viewers. And it just, and look, the truth is there may be other financial decisions that would make this not necessarily the best bet for somebody, but it would work creatively, I think. I believe this has everything you would need to create an artistically satisfying and sound product, or not even a product, let's say. A narrative that moves and inspires people and excites them. Yeah.
We can be totally honest about the fact that for the companies that make stories at this scale, they are products as well as artistic endeavors. And that's fine. It is what it is. I mean, these games were products,
and this would work in the ways that they want those to work, though.
Yeah, they kind of already do in the game form. We talked so much about how it's like playing an action movie, and that's like the goal, and largely succeeds at it. You don't have to change that much, is what it feels like. Not as much as the other ones we've talked about. It does strike me as a different vein of prestige TV than The Last of Us, though. The Last of Us, I feel like, is in a very specific mold of these, I don't know, like Station 11 or, you know, the post-Lost Damon Lindelof version.
Well, I mean, it's also got Walking Dead in it.
Yeah, but it's these like Mass Effect is not going to have the one-off episodes where it suddenly devotes an hour to a flashback about
to dead characters that aren't in the story.
A dead character that Shepard's just going to come across in a building on a side quest somewhere. You know, like
you don't need that for this one, probably.
Last of Us is built for that sort of, or seems like a better fit for that sort of like discursive thing where. Not quite anthology, but we're willing
Well, there's a lot less narrative and a lot less characters as well.
Right. Yeah. But we're willing to treat the episodes like short stories. They can be devoted to particular characters and particularly, you know, tragic little side stories that are one-offs. And Mass Effect is a more driving narrative. It's more like Game of Thrones. You know, Game of Thrones has a sprawling cast and, you know, this huge overarching story. It can work. We're going to try and lay out how we think it would work. Before we get to the right way to do it, I want to propose something that you're going to hate, and you may just dislike me even putting out in the world.
Sure.
But as I was looking at this first game, it occurred to me that I think if you were really dead set on it, you could do this whole game in one movie, and probably not even like a 3-hour movie.
I guess you could
2 hours and a little bit of change. And so
you could.
I think the way you do that, you cut out basically the entire middle section of the game, the whole middle act. But the challenge there, I think, is just getting there's a pretty big gang to get together and getting together quickly as you're sprinting through the story missions. But I think if you open up on Eden Prime, you can introduce Liara there, where she's already investigating the Prothean thing that Saren's coming to investigate. Maybe he's even trying to kidnap her to help him with it. And, you know, you fight off Saren there, have a first encounter. And then we go from there to the Citadel, and you're trying to convince, Shepard's trying to convince the council that Saren's a threat. And they basically assign Garrus to you in one scene, say, well, this guy's been chasing after Saren for a long time. He's never found anything, but you're welcome to work with him. And so they assign Garrus to you right away. He tells you that I got this lead on this Quarian chick who's supposed to have some data for me. And he leads you to Tally, and she's probably hired Rex as her bodyguard on her own. And in the course of sort of like one set of sequences there, we can get everybody together before we leave the Citadel. And from there, you can go straight to Vermeer and then to Ilos in the finale. Because like you said, the Vermeer pops up. They just tell you about Vermeer. So they could just skip, and we don't really need the Thorian. You know, we'd skip the Ragnarok.
Recall, like the opening act in the Citadel is to prove that Garrus is bad. Not Garrus, excuse me, that Saren is bad. And so when Saren is proved bad at the end of, like halfway through the movie or something, he escapes. He runs off to Vermeer to finish what he was up to because his cover is blown. And there you go. You've skipped, most of the game. You can do this, but why? Yeah, but
in order to
there's no point in doing the genophage in this story. And then if you don't do the genophage, what exactly is being, why do Mass Effect at all if you're not doing the discursive version of it? The one that has all these outs and ins and things like that. I mean, it could be done. But I
think the main thing
and I don't think you could do 2 or 3 as movies. So
that's so okay. Here's the thing: the reason why this is such the wrong way to do it. I mean, in the immediate sense, the biggest problem is you're right. You can sprint your way and get to Vermeer halfway through the movie, but you've killed the weight of the Rex confrontation is killed because we didn't have any time with Rex really before that. And I guess you can get around that
genophage at all if you're doing it this way. Yeah.
Well, maybe you just establish a genophage, but you just say Saren, instead of breeding Krogan there, he's breeding Rachni, and we can incorporate. So we establish a Rachni as a concept at least there, because that's one thing we'd be skipping over if we're.
But I mean, what is Rex but a
Benezia.
Wookiee at this point?
Yeah, he's a more bloodthirsty Wookiee.
Like Black Kristan from the Book of Boba Fett.
Oh, that's harsh. But the big problem with that is, I think actually that could be a really good movie, nonetheless. But the problem is,
it could be.
You cannot do Mass Effect 2 as a movie, or even as two movies. I don't think, or sure, you can do Mass Effect 3. So you're setting yourself up for you're setting the story up in the wrong medium there by doing it that way. But it would work for this story at its base, at its core.
It would. You're right. It would. And you could probably do a good Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 that, aren't at all the games, but that are a trilogy of movies. You could. I mean, it would probably just piss off fans of the games. A famously chill group, to be sure.
Yeah, of course.
So, I don't know that there's much value in that. Maybe there's financial value in that, but these would still be very expensive movies, and it would be it would kind of piss off the people who are aware of the IP at all. So that's tough too. But again, those are business decisions I don't particularly care about. Yeah, you're right. It could be done, and you could come up with a good thing that really streamlined the whole experience. And but there's just enough really strong sequences and ideas in the first Mass Effect that could be gotten to without all the shoe leather. Is that the phrase? To get there, and you would still have a solid, satisfying thing. I agree with you. Why? Just why?
I guess just to save money. I don't. Is there a way to do it as a proof of concept that if you can do the whole first game as like a 2-hour premiere event and then the streaming series just picks up with Mass Effect 2? I don't know. But why do a half measure that way? Like,
no need.
Okay, what is the proper length of the first game in television form?
I have thought about this. I think you do 9 episodes.
Okay, that's
9 episode season. Yeah.
My theory was that the longest I could see dragging this out to is like 2 8-episode seasons.
I think you can do the whole first game in 9 episodes.
Okay, I was gonna say 10 as my ideal, but
yeah, 10's fine. Give it some room to breathe. Yeah, and I think the next couple games that breaks down. I think we're looking at a 5-season arc for Mass Effect, in my imagination. The first game mostly confined to the first season.
Let's take this one game at a time. We'll reconvene after Mass Effect 2 as to how that's
absolutely
going to play.
I have a larger plan, though. You see, Hal.
Okay. Okay.
But yes.
But I want to hear. So do you have these 9 episodes, like where they go?
I do. Basically,
okay.
I basically do. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I have like one. I mean, three word descriptions of 10 episodes of just, episode 1, Eden Prime, I think that's a really good pilot episode, actually.
I mean, yeah, Eden Prime is the first episode, I think, obviously. Yeah. Like it's, we do, basically you're starting on the Normandy, you're meeting Anderson, you're meeting Shepard, you're meeting, what's the dead meat, Spectre's name? That guy, Nihilus, yeah, and just sort of
Jenkins.
The crew, Caden, I suppose, Ashley, I suppose, Jenkins, and all these guys. Joker, of course, you meet Joker, played by Seth Green. I think you need Seth Green to come back for Joker.
I don't think so. I think he's.
I think
he's too old. I don't think we should use any of the original people for this.
Not even Carrie Ann Moss later.
I don't actually think that, but she could pull it off better than almost anybody else. But the casting's a whole other thing. First of all, let's just kind of go through these episodes. I think, like I said, Eden Prime's great. I think you could have a great sort of cold open of humanity discovering the first mass relay, that's neat, before you go to the opening credits. I think that could be cool for setting the stage. And then, Eden Prime has its own sort of narrative there, beginning, middle, and end. I think would work for a pilot episode. And then you do 1 or 2 episodes on the Citadel, gathering up everybody, getting your Spectre status going on.
Yeah, exactly. You do all the crime stuff on the Citadel. And you're meeting these species. You're meeting, a lot of species are showing up at the first time on the Citadel. You're getting your first look at the, what are those, the little piss bag guys? What are they? The
Volus.
The Volus, yeah, and the
Volus and the Hanhar,
the Elcor. You're probably meeting all these guys. I think you're probably seeing the Asari for the first time at this point, and the Solarians. So you're just kind of getting a grip on like, oh, this is where all the aliens live, the Citadel. How cool is this? And also doing some crime movie stuff. Going into the underworld, meeting nasty gangster characters. Probably have a shootout at one point, and yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a pretty stuffed episode. Just a lot of species getting thrown in at once at this point. But, what are you going to do? We'll probably stay there for a little bit of the next episode.
Okay, so
yeah.
A couple of notes, though.
Sure.
One, we didn't address, shepherd, male or female, for example.
Well, this is a crucial question and a very difficult one to answer because everyone has their relationship with shepherd. You're going to disappoint a large group of people no matter what you pick here. I think ultimately... I don't know. I mean, I think you probably just cast whoever the right actress who walks in the door. If you find the one who's perfect, whatever gender, then you go with that. It's the same deal as the game, It's kind of impressive how it does matter what gender your shepherd is, but it doesn't at the same time. It is, these games are kind of famously like some of the most feminist games out there just by allowing shepherd to be identical male or female for the most part. There's romance options is different, but just having a female lead character behave the way shepherd does feels revolutionary because they're not taking time for her to be a woman. She's just being shepherd. And I don't know how you duplicate that in a series. It's really hard. And you'll have people mad no matter what you do. Yeah.
I think going female is probably the right move. And
okay,
one of the things I'm saying too is just deciding, I guess, character class, for example.
I don't think you mention her class.
I don't. no, you don't mention it as a thing. But I think one thing I would say is that it's part of the thing. Shepherd can be a biotic or whatever. I think on the screen, just a straight up soldier. I think I've kind of said this about magic and stuff in earlier versions of this, but I think biotics should be pretty rare on the ground. I'm not sure Liara needs to be biotic at all. I think she can just be, the brains of the operation. And she doesn't need to be involved in the action sequences that much. So that
if it's special that Caden is biotic, then that makes Caden more interesting for sure. That helps Caden if no one else can do that shit. Yeah. And I mean, Rex is a biotic.
For gameplay purposes, you want options.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to be.
No, of course not.
For gameplay purposes, they want they want you to have options for biotic companions, but I don't think anybody but Caden really needs to be able to use that stuff for this, and it makes it feel more special, makes it feel more threatening when the bad guy.
Maybe and later, you get Jack and people like that can be biotic, but in this first season, Caden only. Let's say Caden only.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, Jack, it's key to her character.
Right?
That we'll get to that when we get to that. And there are even things like, does in the game, it's kicked off because Shepard interacts with a beacon on Eden Prime and gets these visions beamed into her head, and but that doesn't even need to happen to Shepard. That could happen to Liara or to Caden or Ashley or anybody. Maybe it gives Ashley something a little more to do, actually, and a reason to be dragging her around when she wasn't assigned to you. Because in the game, they need to make sure that no matter how you're trying to roleplay this character and you have reasons to go hit all the plot points. Whereas on the screen, we can just characterize Shepard as being interested in this thing for its own sake and wanting to pursue it. So we don't necessarily need the MacGuffins to be that ingrained into the character.
Are we maintaining that he's one of the most important people in the whole history of existence? I think we have to. That's very much part of Mass Effect.
I mean, I think he. Well, they're becoming that.
You're right
throughout the story, but I don't know that needs to come from a vision from the Prothean beacon being directly into his skull. I mean,
no, I don't know. Part of it, though. It's just another thing that is special about him.
Yeah,
yeah, you're right. Actually,
I think there'll be plenty special.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, another thing that I would be wanting to kind of, I think that the keepers as a concept don't work that well. You need the basic concept of their pawns of the Reapers that they use to control the Citadel. That's fine. They can be just, software programs that run the Citadel. Like the Citadel kind of runs itself in a way that none of the, the humans or the Asaris or whoever can really break down the code and figure out how this works. They just know that it works and how to work it. But they don't need to be actual bug creatures that are walking around.
In making a second draft version of Mass Effect, essentially, you can kind of fix some of this shit, that becomes important and interesting later, but they're stuck with an initial characterization of the Keepers that doesn't really make sense. I mean, I guess even in the first game, we know that they're more than they appear to be. But when you have these scenes, just like, they run the whole system, no one really understands how, and that's dumb.
It's like,
maybe that's not.
And I think putting it in live action only makes it dumber.
So yeah, you can kind of just do a version of that where they're less important. I don't think that they do anything specifically necessary or that can't just be easily diverted to another direction. They can even still have keepers. They just don't have the significance. They're things that we know what they do. They're a species that operates in this way. They're not created only exist on the Citadel. They're a species of alien that's good at managing shit. If you just want to have keepers in there, which they're
I think they should just be robotic, so that they have the robotic. They have like a shutdown protocol that they just go totally blank when you try and open them up, and that makes more sense in a robotic form than an organic form. Anyway, it's kind of cool that late in the game you get sort of
the world building aspect of them is cool.
The speculation that they might have been the first race. That when you're on Ilos, Vigil speculates they might be the first race that was the Reapers killed off, enslaved.
Right.
That's kind of cool, but I don't know if it's worth sort of all the trouble and suspension of disbelief you have to do there. When again, you could mechanize all that, and it's probably more easily digestible in some ways. Okay, so we got 2 or 3 episodes down there, and then pretty much each story planet is its own 1, 2, 3 episode, right?
Well, yeah. I don't know. I think Noveria is 2 episodes because I actually do want to do the corporate espionage stuff. That's the first half of Noveria, and then do Venezia and the Rachni for the second half. I think that all of that, I think what you can do with this show is tell individual stories. I mean, that becomes especially important later, when you're doing when you're trying to adapt loyalty missions for Mass Effect 2 or whatever. But that's part of the identity of the thing, is that you can have one off. So, and I think that goes to Therum as well. That's the planet that Liana is on in the first game. You can do like a pirate story there. You can have Geth, and you can have like some kind of hard edge action scenes there that are not directly connected to the main narrative of Mass Effect, but are within that episode. Has a rising and falling action, and it is a story complete to itself. I want these things to have kind of individual identity as episodes in a way that I don't know, that the better shows I would say do, especially adventure shows like this. That would be.
I think you could still do, especially we're talking about hour-long episodes, not like 44-minute episodes. Maybe then you could do Noveria. You could do the corporate espionage in 30 minutes and the other stuff in 30 minutes, and not feel that rushed. But you could also do it in 2 separate ones. That's fine too, I think.
Yeah, I want to. I think
Vermeer is just one episode, though.
I want room for the world building. I want to have conversations about shit. I want to go talk to a guy like a drunk Turian in the bar who got fired and he's pissed off about it. Things like that. I think give this a lot of identity. Beyond just plot point to plot point, which is a problem when you're adapting lengthy video games into a shorter format. But I do want the things that just give texture to the world. And I think that Noveria is a good place to do that in some ways, because you get to see like, okay, well, here's a corporate planet that that they run without laws, and they kind of have their own way of doing things out here that's fairly unethical and illegal, but there's not much you can do about it because there's no legal system for this planet, that sort of thing. That's cool. and it's sort of representative of a larger world, and that's important, I think, in Mass Effect, that you see different places and how they run, and that how they deal with the challenges of being part of a galactic society, or pioneer days out on Pharos, all that shit. I think is in having a variety of things there is good, and it puts it kind of I guess you would feel a little like something like Firefly, I guess, episode to episode, as we're going from place to place. Space adventure stuff.
I think part of the problem though is once we get the stakes set, it becomes harder to have those Firefly diversions, because Firefly, they were not dealing with an imminent threat to end all sentient life in the galaxy. And that seems to supersede. It makes anything else seem pretty frivolous.
Sure.
Once those, but that doesn't come fully into focus, I guess, until you do the Vermeer stuff.
Entire first season to set the world by doing this stuff, to kind of have moments of just like, well, let's go talk to the drunk guy. You can you don't have to step on the accelerator until basically Vermeer, which is the end of season 1.
Well, maybe that's another thing.
Quite. It's episode 7 on my breakdown.
Sort of like what I was saying about the not needing the beacon visions to motivate any version of Shepard. Well, maybe we don't even need to establish the Reapers until the end of the first season. That at first you can be pursuing Saren a little more lackadaisically, but by the sense of he's doing something bad. This is your assignment. Maybe even it's like the council isn't taking this that seriously, but they're giving you what they think of as a crappy assignment as your first mission as a Spectre. The full apocalyptic stakes are not in view in the first half of the first season, or maybe until we get to November. So I'm thinking, okay, if we're doing this, if you're stretching this, maybe if you're going to do it in 2 seasons, then I think your first one gets Eden Prime, a couple of episodes on the Citadel, do Therum to pick up Liara, couple of side mission episodes. Maybe you go deal with a biotic cult. That's kind of a cool thing. Maybe you do something as an introduction to Cerberus. And then you end with a 2-parter on Noveria, where you're confronting Benezia with her daughter and all that. And maybe that's where you really get the sense of the genocide stakes.
One thing I think that is nice to thread through this is the mind control narrative that is taking place. Like, every place has some sort of mind control narrative going on. Pharos with the Thorian, Noveria with the Rachni, and that is all part of the, part of Saren's plan. This is part of the game. This is already there. I think you highlight that. Saren is plotting something to do with mind control. And that's sort of the thread that we are chasing through the season, which gets exploded on Vermeer, of course, when we find out what's really going on. And then we're like, oh, okay, kind of thing. It's a reveal, And
I guess
also
the reveal there is that he's not trying to harness mind control to use it against the rest of the galaxy. He's trying to research that sort of on the sly in order to inoculate himself from being fully brainwashed by Sovereign. But it's already,
that's kind of good, right? That's kind of good. Yeah. I think actually there's room for Saren to really emerge as a better character as presented, if he is the central antagonist of the first season. I mean, he's the central antagonist of the first game, but even still, I don't know, that's a character that never really worked for me in the game, and I think there's room for him to work on the show. And by focusing on him making, not realizing he's indoctrinated and trying to make choices based on, I don't know, probably starts from some place of if I'm close to the dragon, I'll be able to stab it easier, until he's finally just completely enthralled to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's also room to make Benezia more of a character.
Absolutely. I mean, for all the time that these games have, I do feel like,
but she's only in 2 scenes in the game, and you can do a little more with that in this case.
Maybe you get Marina Sirtis, huh? Can we get Marina Sirtis at least to come in and be Benezia?
I honestly, I think at this point, just everybody's 15 or 20 years older than what they were voicing the first time around.
Well, but Izzy is a 950-year-old character.
I know, but I just don't think I think a clean break from the voices and the actors and the game is for the best to give the show its own thing.
Okay.
We can talk about casting in a minute.
Joker,
but what is that? The problem is, okay.
Young. Okay.
What does that leave for a second season or for a back half season? I think you do the Bring Down the Sky DLC mission is good. It's just a cool sci-fi thing of an asteroid being weaponized as a weapon of mass destruction, as a terrorist attack. And it's also like high stakes enough that, Shepard wouldn't just ignore that to go keep chasing after Sarah necessarily, because it's threatening an entire world. Mm-hmm. You do a little more Cerberus stuff. You can do Pharos in 2 episodes probably. And then you have
I would say one. Cut Pharos down. Highlights. Pharos is one episode.
You can do one where you're going after the Geth, and then one dealing with the mind controlled colonists in the Thorian. I don't know. You could pad that out if you're trying to get. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. It depends if you're doing 10 episodes or trying to stretch us out to 12 or 16.
No. Keep it tight. Just okay. I think going forward, knowing what to cut is useful too. There'll definitely be some loyalty missions that we're not going to want to put in there, stuff like that. And just a taut, 9 to 10 episodes, length of a Game of Thrones season. Yeah. Keeping it tight. And then you can make them all the individual episodes as budget, as big and as hugely expensive as they need to be or whatever. And then the season's over before it, and no one gets tired of it. That's my thought.
Okay, let me for the actual ending, like final bit of the season. First thought was just break this up according to the missions in the game, and like one episode can be Ilos, and then the last episode can be the attack on the Citadel. And you could do it that way, but as I thought about it more, I think you should pad out. The one place you should pad things out is that interlude between Vermeer and going to Ilos, where you're locked down on the Citadel. I think you could spend a whole episode plotting a more elaborate, heist to steal the Normandy out from quarantine.
I don't know. I feel like Ilos is the place. I think you do that, but then the second half of that episode, or even the last 20, 15 minutes of that episode is Ilos. Ilos is an information dump. I mean, it could be its own episode. It's kind of a cool setting, but
Yeah, but I like also the think idea that for the sake of
just stepping on the gas there. Once we've hit Vermeer, we're just like, let's go. Let's get to the finale here. It's all momentum at that point, I think. But
me too, though. That's why I think actually Ilos and the Battle of Citadel should be both combined into the finale. With just no break, no pause,
easily
no break.
Do a whole hour on the Battle of the Citadel. Easily.
Yeah, but you could also do an 80 or 90 minute episode for a season finale of a big show. That happens all the time.
Sure.
And I think you could also compress it. You could do you can do Ilos in 20 minutes if you're not spending that much time shooting through all the halls.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're not wrong. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's true. I could go with that for sure. Man, this is some inside baseball. Nobody who has not played the game is going to have any idea what the fuck we're... Well, of course not. I mean, if you've gotten this far without playing the game, God bless you. But yeah, that's what we're here to do. That's what the conversation we wanted to have.
Exactly. Yeah. This is for us. That's fine. And I guess we're deciding one season is fine for this. That's
for the first game. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could cut it down to one movie, but you shouldn't. And you could stretch it out to 2 seasons. But I think, you also sort of in the interests of putting the best foot forward, just making the first season, because this is a thing that if the first season is not an enormous hit, you're not going to get a second season at the budget level we're talking about here that you have to work with.
Yeah. And so you end strong.
Want to just make the first season as punchy as possible. Yeah.
Totally.
Okay. I have another thing, but do you have casting things? I find it hard to do fantasy casting for this for some reason. Harder than earlier games.
It is hard, and the big problem is I think that everyone's an alien. You're not gonna. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, even the human characters, there's already such fully realized performances there that I don't know. Recasting existing roles is not as interesting to me as trying to figure out who can play this comic book character that's never been on screen, or that, like, for like the Knights of the Old Republic characters, again, they come off as more cartoon characters in those. So thinking of, different ways to do that.
But I mean, another problem is
I did my best to come up with.
I'm curious. I think a problem that you run into, of course, is, a lot of these roles, Liara, probably Garrus, a lot of these aliens would be, I would imagine, makeup, not practical. So you're asking, actors to, go through a very, a complicated process, to play this character with, latex all over their face for, a significant number of years. And
I think Garrus has also got one of those like CGI
probably maybe
mask
Garrus
setups
does.
on that you have to wear
Rex
constantly
does, for sure. But some of them are makeup based. Certainly the Asari, and this isn't.
The Asari is
CGI is probably not a lot easier either. It's just asking actor never show their face, but still be on set, unless it's just a voiceover performance, which I guess you could do. I mean, the fucking Mandalorian does that, so no rule against that. But
right.
All the same,
Well, and then I think about like having seen like Benedict Cumberbatch crawling around in a ping pong ball suit to do the physical
Smaug.
Performance of Smaug. I guess you probably do want a unified physical and vocal performance for Rex,
Well, I don't think you're going to get names for those roles unless it's voiceover only. I think, you're not going to get somebody famous to play Liara. She's not going to do, you're not going to get Charlize Theron to come in. That's a name that's not right for it, but just, you're not going to get a big name to do these, or even a recognizable name, I would think.
Well,
and
let's game it out though. Because Shepard's difficult. I'm trying.
Yeah.
All this is difficult because I'm trying to keep to people who are 40 or under to start with, like as of today.
Yeah.
And a lot of just the way things have drifted, people are hanging around longer as time goes on, and our preservation technology is keeping Tom Cruise looking more vital than people. I mean, God, he's 20 years older in Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning than Wilford Brimley was in The Thing. But I still think, especially because like we're talking about, this is a commitment of you're not going to finish this for at least 5 years. I think we want Shepard to start at 40 tops.
Right.
So there's start. Emily Blunt is exactly 40. She would make the cut. I don't know if you're going to get
Emily Blunt
her to sign on to something like this.
That's good.
But I don't know.
She kind of does a version of this in Edge of Tomorrow, and she's quite good in it.
Edge of Tomorrow, yeah.
I mean, look, I think people want more of that performance, So yeah, I that's pretty good, man. That's a tough role to cast, and right off, you got a good one. Mm-hmm.
It is. Well, that's especially if you're trying to keep it under 40, and you need somebody with gravitas. And a lot of people who are under 40 haven't had a lot of chance to demonstrate that type of sort of action movie gravitas yet. At least not like repeatedly. But I don't know. There's people out there that you can get on more of a tighter budget than you can get Emily Blunt. That you can get a Jodie Comer or a Zazie Beetz or somebody perhaps to do that.
Those are less interesting to me, though. For that, I don't know. Maybe I just have the proof positive of Edge of Tomorrow that she could do it.
Right. Well, honestly, casting Shepard's the least interesting part of it to me, because it's like, okay, you get the best all-around actor you can for the price you can pay, and that kind of dictates that. And then you can dictate what the Shepard characterization is, even like tailor to their strengths. Whereas the companion characters are more defined, so we can cast to them more directly, I suppose. Like Caden, for example. I think 10, 12 years ago, it would be like James Marsden is perfect for that role.
Yeah.
That seems to be what he's made for.
Yeah.
Which I guess dictates that now that he's aged out of it, Ty Sheridan gets it.
Whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Because he was young. Because he plays young Cyclops.
He's appropriately boring for Caden, but you obviously don't want Caden to still be boring.
Right.
I don't know.
No, actually, so my proposal for that, how about can we get Jeremy Allen White in here?
The bear.
He is.
Maybe you can.
Yeah, the bear guy. He is twitchy and intense, and this dictates a different characterization for Caden, where he's like a little more messed up from his biotic implants that were put in sort of funkily. That is a thing that exists on the page in Caden's characterization, but doesn't really come through the performance in the game. But let's make him weirder and twitchier. Why not?
Well, I'm down for that, and I also like the idea of adding to Caden. Like if there's a character that could be improved by addition in this, by doing some things and making some choices, Caden is probably top among it. Like you say, on paper, he should be more interesting than he is. So yeah, having an actively twitchy guy there is probably a good idea. And I think Caden, because I think he survives in the show. I think he's probably taking up the role filled by, maybe other of the boring humans that show up later in Mass Effect. James, for example, or I don't know what's the guy in the second one. No, probably not him. You probably want to keep
Jacob.
Probably want to keep Jacob just because of the Cerberus stuff. But yeah, like. I don't know.
Right.
I'll be looking to cut people out as we go on, and I think a good Caden assists in that.
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to it. We're not cutting people out of the first game.
No, not out of the first game. You need all these ones. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ashley's a tough one. The only game I came up with is Rosa Salazar. Just because I recently started watching. Yes, I guess she was Battle Angel Alita. I have not seen that movie, so I don't know how she acquitted herself there. I just started watching the show Undone.
Who is that?
She's the star of.
I've always been curious.
I'm only 2 episodes in. It's Raphael Bob Blocksberg's follow-up to BoJack Horseman, which I think is the most brilliant and underrated show of the last 20 years.
Of course.
And so I was, but this follow-up show just completely went into the ether with nobody ever saw it. And I've only watched the first 2 episodes. Right. I'm not sure if I love Odenkirk's in it. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I love the show, but her central performance is really good. So I'm like, you know what? Let's get her some work. I guess Battle Angel Alita she got a pretty big shot there, but also they made her look freaking weird like and yeah. Okay.
They did.
That's good.
You know what? Raphael Bob Blocksberg could use some more work, by the way. What's he up to these days?
A lot.
Oh, what's he doing?
I don't know. I would have to look that up. That's a tangent we don't have time for here.
Okay.
We have to figure out how to recast Seth Green.
You don't want Seth Green? He still looks like he's young.
He's like 50.
Okay.
And I think Joker should come off as junior to Shepard at least. And also just in not being too beholden to the game.
Sure.
So I think you slot in Jason Schwartzman or Kieran Culkin. There.
Oh, I like Kieran Culkin. Yeah.
And you're in good
Schwartzman's,
shape.
I think, is too old too. But yeah, Kieran Culkin, sure. Perfect. Yeah.
Probably. He also comes off as really young, but Culkin's the first choice.
Okay. I like that. Yeah. Anderson.
For Tally.
Tally?
Oh, Anderson. Mm-hmm. Anderson's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because you have
fill
to
the Keith David shoes.
Step in the shoes of Keith David. And I just think Keith David's a bit too old now to pull it off. Because Anderson's still kind of two-fisted in this. In these games, even though he's the older statesman.
And Keith David isn't old.
So I don't know. Sure. You could.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You could do Sterling K. Brown.
Could
to try and do like the most direct follow-up I can think of.
But no, he's.
Yeah.
I'd like him in here somewhere. I mean, honestly, I'd consider him for Garrus if you know.
Sure.
Yeah. He's a great
how about Ian Glenn? Good old Jorah the Andal for Anderson. Different route. He's got more of an accent.
Yeah. Well, look, to be fair, I mean, 1,000 people, a character actor in his late 50s with gravitas could play a military sergeant. Anderson is a playable role. The question is like, how beholden are you to the fact that Keith David characterized him? Like if it's a clean break, then maybe you do want somebody like Ian Glenn in there. Yeah.
I'm saying let's get away from it. Yeah. Let's be okay with. Yeah. We don't have to. I mean, it's easy to say that we don't have to be that beholden to Raphael Sabarja's vocal performance as Caden to do so much in there. It's a little harder to step out of the shadow of Keith David, but I think it might be for the best. If we can't get Keith David himself to do it, we're not going that route. I don't know that it behooves the show to have a 70% strength Keith David in the role. Maybe just do something different.
Yeah. You don't want him stuck trying to just capture the Keith David swagger and performance, I guess, which is also the logic behind replacing Joker, that and him being old. But yeah.
Right.
And I think these characters are good enough to survive without their original performances. I really do. Like, as good as a lot of these roles are, and iconic as some of these vocal performances are, Garrus, I'm really thinking of. Like, I think you probably do have to redefine them to some extent, unless you're literally using the same actor. And maybe you could get away with that for some of the aliens.
Garrus,
I don't know.
You could, but I'm trying to come up with names to actually do performances there, not just voices.
Mm-hmm.
And again, trying to be names that will accept a role like Garrus. It's a supporting role. Even though, this is by necessity, this has to be a pretty high budget, big production that you could get a decent name there. But for Garrus, I'm thinking of somebody like a Bill Skarsgård or Evan Moss Backrack from
Sure. I'm down with this. I do think you probably are going to want to do a Game of Thrones thing as well here. Which, I mean, how many of the actors on Game of Thrones had you heard of before Game of Thrones? Probably a half dozen or so. And I think for the most part, those were people that exited early. Ian Glenn was around. He'd been in movies. The familiar face.
Sure.
A few other guys, but for the most
Charles
part,
Dance had been around.
Yeah, Charles Dance, great.
Speaking of Charles Dance, I thought for Hackett he could be.
Oh yeah,
Admiral
totally.
Again, if we don't mind anglicizing some of these roles, because Lance Henriksen's he's very, very old at this point.
Yes, too old, frankly. Yeah, but Charles Dance is not, and he would be. Look, you're always getting value out of Charles Dance. And Hackett, I think, is a character that could only be kind of enhanced and improved on. The little bits of characterization and personality and backstory we get on him are compelling, and I think you need that role. You need an Anderson for when Anderson's not available, and especially on a show this size. And sure, Charles Dance could be Hackett or Anderson. He could, he's within that range. He's fine.
Maybe a little older than I'm picturing there, but
maybe a little older.
It's fine. But I don't know that I have anything for Tally necessarily. That's
a tough one.
I don't think you're going to get Millie Bobby Brown to play that role with her face covered the entire time.
That's the thing.
So that can be somebody.
But I mean,
I think you could get David Harbour to play Rex.
Sure. That's fun. Yeah. But I think you do need to probably rely on some unknown people here, in the way that Thrones does. You need to kind of bring in some new faces, get people that will be defined by their, the roles, some Kit Haringtons.
Oh, sure. But that's no good for this exercise.
Sure. Okay.
This is about trying to identify types. And you can get an unknown that does a David Harbour thing, but that's the vibe that we're aiming for here.
Yeah, okay. Fair. Okay. Let's see. I don't know who's you know what? Here's who his Sterling K. Brown plays. Saren.
Okay. I had Kevin McKidd as a possibility.
Yeah. Okay. Again, this is a role a lot of people could probably succeed with. Kind of
for sure.
A sort of an intelligent villain. There's a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you could get Paul Bettany to do it, wonderful.
Sure. Yeah.
But he's not going. I don't know if you're going to get Bettany or Sterling K. Brown. And McKidd is somebody that I like. I feel like he's always been underused and is gettable enough, so he pops up in these fantasy casting situations from time to time.
How about Liara? Who do you have for Liara?
I mean, is it cheating to just say Tatiana Maslany because she can kind of do anything?
Well, she would be good at that. Yeah, she would pull that off. No question about that. Yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah. All right.
Benezia. I mean,
again,
the thing is, it's not that big of a commitment of that role. Yeah. It's a 2-episode arc. Like it's not that big of a commitment.
Exactly.
If you don't mind being painted blue for a couple of days.
Get Jean Smart, whatever.
There's nowhere else to put her there. Okay.
Or you want to be really fun. Really fun would be okay, that's fine. Maybe for this you get what's her name? The woman from White Lotus. And the Christopher Guest films.
Jennifer Stifler's mom, of course. I mean, I think she brings a spaciness to this space opera that wouldn't really help.
Yeah, okay, that's a joke answer, but it's another role I think a lot of people could succeed with. A respected actress north of 50 who wouldn't mind showing up for 2 episodes and getting painted blue. You're probably going to be okay.
Okay, that's all the main characters.
I don't know. Is this dismissiveness kind of just a lot of people can do that, whatever.
Undercutting our own exercise here, but that's fine. All right, that's all the main characters. The only other thing I added an idea that I came to love. I want the Elcor, the big elephant creatures that all talk in a big monotone, and they tell you because they can't articulate their tones through their voice, so they tell you what tone they're adopting at the beginning.
Emotional content.
They say like quavering response. I think they should all be voiced by the same actor and also performed by the same actor in a big bulky suit, and that's Jason Segel.
Okay, yeah, make him do it. Why not?
Pay him an inordinate amount of money to do that.
That's funny. Okay.
You are good to be.
There's a lot of room for comedy in this show too. I mean, this really can be a lot of things. There's so much potential in a Mass Effect TV show, and
but it's primarily an action show.
I don't know. The farther we get away from it, the less likely it feels in a way. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't like that? A space action show. But it has this driving narrative and a multi-season arc and many characters that could potentially be beloved by an audience in the way Game of Thrones is what ones were. It checks a lot of the boxes I think people were looking for when they greenlit, The Witcher and Wheel of Time and Lord of the Rings of Power and Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and just kind of, but it swerves and it's unique in a way that people want because they get tired of just doing the exact same thing over again. That's why Marvel movies don't work anymore. It's the new thing. It's the evolution from Game of Thrones. Yeah. They should have done it. I don't know. There's probably still
it's got elements of Game of Thrones, but it can be it can be done. It's not as like punishingly bleak and dark and gross as Game of Thrones. There's horror elements to it, and it's very violent, but it doesn't need to be R-rated in that way. It could be a bigger tent than even Game of Thrones was, which obviously turned out to be a huge tent that people love that show. But I think it's sort of what Rings of Power and The Witcher, like all these things that have failed and have now made it harder, the path for what we're talking about that much harder.
Right. Yeah.
But I think a part of that pitch for all of those is probably like, this is a more accessible Game of Thrones. It's going to be kind of more violent than Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or Narnia or whatever, and tap into some of that Game of Thrones audience, but also not be as bracing and dark and rapey and everything else that turn people off.
There will not be whores getting murdered in Mass Effect. Yeah.
But there will be Lovecraftian beasts from outside of time that are trying to wipe out all life on not just one planet, but every planet. And I think that, gives enough weight. The other thing that, I sort of, I think I included this in the pitch for
the number of Funko Pops you could make out of this.
And it has the advantage. I think, I said a lot of this about Knights of the Republic even, but the cool thing about these Bioware games, they have the advantage of, as adaptations, having source material, people in the know what to look forward to, know the set pieces to like, oh, when they get to Ilos and the Battle of Citadel, that's going to be rad. But even the people who are totally in the know, they don't know necessarily who's going to live or die at any given point, because there are the lack of a single canon narrative. What do you call it? Continuity for this. It gets you, and that Game of Thrones got to play it both ways that way too, that there was the initiated, like knew what was coming and could, rub their fingers together and tease their friends with spoilers, but also they were still on the hook of not knowing how things ultimately played out for a while, up to the end when things played out as they did. But that a Bioware setup allows you to play both sides of that in a way that I think has enormous potential, if commercially to drive, engagement with the show, to use all the commercial terms.
Of course.
That everybody's, people can know what's coming and still be on their edge of their seats. Is it going to be Caden or Ashley that bites the bullet? Is Rex going to live? I think people will probably assume he is.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to throw a whole other proposal at you next time when we get to Mass Effect 2 about maybe ways to throw curveballs at people.
This is my thing. Mass Effect 1, I think, translates pretty directly into a TV season. 2 and 3, no. There's things you got to do there. There's changes you got to make. There are adaptation choices that you can improve upon, you know? I got a lot of ideas about Cerberus. I got a lot of ideas about the ending and how to, put these on screen. And I think that will keep people on the hook and be like, actually don't know what they're going to do in the TV show because it is draft 2, you know?
Yeah.
It's a new version. And that's what we'll talk about when we finally get around to the Mass Effect 2. But this is our idea, man. We're gonna keep going at this. Hope you enjoyed it because more's coming. Mass Effect, the whole thing. Yeah. We're gonna talk it out over the course of 2024. I imagine.
Start playing Mass Effect 2 right now.
All right. Thank you for listening to this first installment.